the stand. Now he runs. He produces a magic trick. He pulls out another one. This is incredible. This is ridiculous. This is 15 out of 10 on the incredible meter. What a player. What an entertainer. Give him the medal. Give him the Dally M medal.
Hello, footy fans, and welcome back to the Chip and Chase podcast. It's a Thursday, so I'm sure you all know the drill by now. We're here to do our preview for the Thursday and Friday games of round 4 of the NRL Telstra Premiership season. So we'll jump straight into it. The first game, of course, Thursday, Roosters taking on the Penrith Panthers, 8 p.m, Allianz Stadium, Sydney. So Roosters home game. Roosters currently sitting second on the ladder, and the Panthers are fourth. So it's a clash of the heavyweights in this one. Two teams very much expected to feature at the pointy end of the season come season's end. But we'll get into it, and we'll just start by going through the ins and outs. Once again, we're not going to be doing teamless podcasts from now on. I'm sure you guys have caught on to that. You may have already seen these. I now do the Instagram. If you're not following me on Instagram, go give me a follow there at Chip and Chase Podcast. But we do these wrap-ups. We do these ins and outs across every round over on there. So you might have already seen these, or if you're tuned into the Supercoach podcast, I also went through them there. But we'll go through them pretty quickly here. For the Roosters, there's a few ins and outs. Luke Keary has returned from his 11-day stand-down policy from the HIA, so he returns at 5/8. Sandon Smith is actually out of this game after a terrific performance in round 3. He's dropped out with injury. I can't quite remember what the injury was, but yeah, he's expected to miss a few weeks with that. Sam Walker has had his HIA downgraded to a Cat 2, so he is free to play this game, which is really good because you want to see the best players in a clash against the best teams. So there's those ones. The other one is that Lindsay Collins, he's dropped out of this one with an injury as well. I believe it's a knee injury. Hopefully nothing too serious there. But he's been replaced by Terrell May at starting prop, and Egan Butcher comes on to the bench in this one. The other one I want to mention in this one, and I can't remember if I mentioned them last week, but the 18th man for the Roosters in this game is Michael Jennings. He's served his 4-year suspension for performance-enhancing drugs. So at the ripe old age of like 35, 36, he's been signed by the Roosters, and he is currently 18th man. So he could be pushing his way back into first-grade contention at some point this season. He's not too far off the 300 game mark as Michael Jennings, so good to see him back. He's done the crime, he served the time. That's all you can ask for in this sense. So that's really cool there. I might make a bit of a reel about him because that is really cool stuff. But we'll move straight over to the Penrith Panthers. In terms of their ins and outs, none more big than Nathan Cleary, who is expected to miss about 4 weeks with a hamstring injury. He's replaced by Brad Schneider, who is coming in to make his Penrith Panthers debut at halfback. The other out for this one is that Scott Sorensen is expected to miss a few weeks as well. So Luke Garner comes in to the starting side at number 11, and Maverick Gaia comes in to make his debut for not even just the Panthers, but his debut in the NRL in jersey 17. So really cool stuff there. Hope they give him a good run, and I hope he absolutely kills it. Absolute weapon is Maverick Gaia. So that's all the team list news for this one. So we will get straight into my tips. Now, obviously, it's a very hard one. You've got two of the best teams in the NRL. I think I'm going to take the Roosters. I've really liked what I've seen from them so far this season, and I think the loss of Nathan Cleary is just going to be maybe not too big. I can definitely see the Panthers coming away with it. They still have weapons across the park. But this Roosters side, pretty full strength. You miss a couple of players here and there, but you replace them with, just as good players, if you will. I think they can come away off the win against a Nathan Cleary-less Penrith Panthers. Very much a close one. If I had to tip, it'd be a 1-12 sort of scoreline. I'm not sure if it'll be a high scoring one. Both these teams can put on points, but also, they're going to want to emphasise defence, especially the Panthers. They've very much been on the defensive side of things so far this 2024 season. But yeah, I'll take the Roosters in this one. I think that's who I'm going to take in my tipping comp. In terms of how I see it playing out, I'm not quite sure. I think, you can always, as I say, you always look at forward pack battles. Penrith's forward pack is so I'd still say it's underrated. Like, you look at them on paper and you go, yeah, they're going to get outclassed. They never do. They seemingly never do. They always stand up. There's still no James Fisher-Harris in this one, so Lindsay Smith is starting at prop. But, yeah, I'm not sure where the battle's going to be won. I think the Roosters are just going to play a bit more expansive. I expect a lot from Luke Keary in this one. He's going to be someone I probably put in my matchups preview, but I've just got a feeling that Luke Keary is just going to run this show and put on a bit of a clinic for the Roosters here. I think it could be a very even battle in the forward pack, and then it's just going to be about what your halves can conjure. And for me, I just see that the Roosters halves getting a bit more out of their team in this one. So I think that's where the battle's going to be won. Nice and steady down the middle. Both teams playing really, really direct. And then it's who can take control. And I think the Roosters halves will get that done. We will go straight into that matchup. But yes, my matchup in this game is Luke Keary and Jerome Luai. Obviously, without Nathan Cleary, Jerome Luai is going to have to step up, as he always tends to do. He always looks pretty darn good in Cleary's absence. He's always under criticism. He's going to just take that in his stride. He's going to wear that. But I expect him to have a really good game this one. He's looked pretty good to start the season, though he hasn't had too many of the, big plays, but he's looking energetic. He's bouncing around. He looks good, Jerome Luai. Obviously, his last season before he departs for the Wests Tigers. So he wants to repay that faith in the Panthers and give them a good year before he goes out. Well, as I said with Luke Keary, coming back for a concussion, I just think he's also going to be up for this one to prove that he's still one of the premier halves in our competition. People forget that before Luai and Cleary won the three-peat, Luke Keary was a part of the two-peat for the Roosters. So he's still a weapon. I really like that battle. There are other ones across the board, which you'd expect in a game against heavyweights like this. I like Dominic Young, Brian To'o. I don't think they'll actually mark up. Yeah, they should. Dominic Young's a right. Yeah, Dominic Young, Brian To'o. I like that matchup, to be honest. But yeah, definitely my matchup in this one. Luke Keary, Jerome Luai. Lock and load that. Really excited to see how these two players perform. If we want to get into my bets for this one, I am not quite sure where to go with this. I think, as I said, it can very much be either team that can win this one, either team can take this one away, and either team can win it in a multitude of different ways. But I'll stick to my guts. I've thrown, as I said, the Roosters as the head-to-head. I think that leg was paying about $1.80 or something. As I said, close game, so you don't need to go too much into big win, little win. Just take either team that you think is going to win head-to-head. I've got the Roosters. I've got Brandon Smith as an anytime try scorer. He's looked dangerous so far this season. Really impressed with how he's playing for the Roosters. And we know that he just has that ability to score tries. I think he could get across in this one. Obviously, no Sandon Smith, but Connor Watson is on the bench. Not sure how much Connor's going to eat into Brandon Smith's minutes, but we'll have to wait and see. I assume it'd be pretty similar to Sandon Smith. If not, I'd assume Connor will play a bit through the middle. But in saying that, Victor Radley's been playing some consistent 80-minute games so far this season, so maybe that won't happen. But yeah, Brandon Smith as an anytime try scorer, I don't mind that. I think that leg by itself was paying $5.50, so really good value in that one. And I've got the match going under 39.5 total match points. Really difficult to call. You never really know. As I said, both teams can really score points, but I expect a gritty, grindy affair. 39.5 match points is essentially, two teams scoring 20. That's still a lot of points in a game. If that actually happens, the bet will fail. It'd be more like one team scoring 20, the other team scoring 18, and the bet will get up. But yeah, I've got those as my legs. Once again, I'll run through them. So we have Brandon Smith Sydney Roosters head-to-head, Brandon Smith anytime try scorer, and under 39.5 total match points. The odds for that one come to $17.50. So if you're placing $1 on that and the bet gets up, you get $17.50 back to the dollar. Once again, I do all my betting through Sportsbet. I'm not affiliated in any way with Sportsbet. They're just the agency I choose to bet through. And make sure that you're only gambling what you can afford. Do not bet what you can't afford to lose, guys. But we will move on from that one. That'll wrap us up for the Roosters-Panthers clash. So we'll move into our Friday games. Of course, Good Friday, we have the Rabbitohs Bulldogs, a pretty historic clash here. Rabbitohs currently sitting pretty in 17th on the ladder, last place, while the Bulldogs are up into 12th after getting a win in round 3. This one is taking place at 4:05 p.m, Accor Stadium, Sydney. Rabbitohs home game. And we'll just quickly go through the ins and outs for the Rabbitohs. There was a few in this one. So they have dropped Sean Keppie and they have dropped Saliva Havili. First of all, that is really rugged to Saliva Havili. 2 weeks ago, he was out and out their best player on the field, just in the team. And then, yeah, he had a pretty poor performance last week, but you also switched his role and made him start at hooker. I don't think he's been a hooker for a long time. Havili, just someone who can cover it. For them to drop him to 18th man, really hard done by. Sean Keppie, I also don't think he's been too bad, but I don't think he's brought what they needed. He's given away a few cheap penalties, a lot of like the blocker penalties. I can't remember the exact word for what they call them nowadays. But yeah, those two players have been dropped. They're replaced by Michael Cheekham on the bench and Shaq Mitchell on the bench. Important to note as well, David Mwale, who started at front row last week, is now back to the bench as well, and Tom Burgess has been promoted. I think that's a good idea. I think the more minutes into Tom Burgess, the better. He was really, really good for them in his 26-minute spell last week. But those are the only changes. Of course, Dean Hawkins still locking up that number 7 spot ahead of Lachlan Ilias. Well, for the Bulldogs, they've got a very much unchanged side from last week. Of course, getting that win, an emphatic win against the Titans as well. So there's not much that you need to change. So they're exactly the same, stock standard 1-17. They've got Bronson Xerri and Toby Sexton as 19th and 20th men at the moment. We'll have to see how that one happens. Josh Adokar has also been named in the reserves, so he could be a late inclusion, but I don't expect it. I think they'll just rock one more week with the team that got it done and the team that performed well. Now, this one, I'd argue, is even harder to tip than the previous one. You guys all know, if you listen to this podcast, I have a lot of concerns about the South Sydney Rabbitohs this year. I think there's a lot happening behind the scenes and they're actually in a bit of turmoil. And a lot of that isn't being brought to light, which is good. But from what I've heard, from what I know, there's a lot of concerns there. In saying that, I think they have to get their season on track here. I am going to tip them against the Bulldogs. I'm not confident in that at all. Bulldogs performed exceptional last week, and we know Rabbitohs were really, really, really poor. So I can definitely see the Bulldogs are getting up for this one. I think I'm just taking a 0-3 team back against the wall. People are starting to question them. People are starting to look deeper and see that these problems may be running deeper. If they can get this win, maybe the pressure's off them a bit and people are going to give them a bit more slack. So I see them getting away off the win in this one, but yeah, not very confident in that tip whatsoever. Once again, in terms of how I see this one playing out, it's weird. I've always gone into these Bulldogs previews and been like, they don't have the forward pack to match it. They don't have the forward pack to match it. Well, so far, this South Sydney forward pack have not stood up. They have been really, really poor just in every game this season. Last week, Tavita Totola and Keon Koloamatangi were the only two players for the South Sydney Rabbitohs to run for over 100 metres against that Roosters forward pack. So if that's all that you're getting from your squad, how's it going to fare against the Bulldogs team who have been playing really, really well despite not having the greatest team on paper? Who knows? So I'm not sure where this one will be won. Obviously, I'll keep saying forward pack battles are very important, and I think the Rabbitohs are going to need a big one from this one. I think they need people to stand up and run at them. But can they topple this Bulldogs one who have been standing up themselves? Not quite sure. Regardless, if let's say it's an even contest in the middle once again, where do the points come from? Well, we know that with the South Sydney Rabbitohs, your points come from Cody Walker and Latrell Mitchell. Cody Walker was really poor last week, and I think he's been pretty poor to start this season regardless. Latrell, there's a lot of calls at the moment going around for Latrell to be moved out of fullback, get him into the centres, get him anywhere else. I think it's crazy. I think this is the best Latrell has performed for the Rabbitohs since he has been there. His effort areas are so much further up. Like, I'm Latrell's biggest critic, but he's been very much someone to just sit back and wait for things to happen or only chime in on attacking players, which has worked. They've won games before. It's not knocking him in any way. But the way he's played this year, he's getting himself involved. He's not sitting back and waiting for it. He's running the ball. He's getting involved. He looks good. He looks fit. And now the calls are out because the Rabbitohs are 0-3. I don't think it's Latrell's fault that the Rabbitohs are 0-3. The Rabbitohs are 0-3 because their forward pack have lost every duel that they've been in. And even when they win moments of contests, the backs and the halves can't execute. You know, they're very quick to drop Lachlan Ilias when I think Cody Walker has been really, really poor and he's making a lot of stupid errors. In saying that, I think, you know, Cody Walker's definitely the key to this side. I wouldn't be dropping Cody. You need his experience. You need his spark. He's an absolute weapon of our game. And I think he knows that. I'd say he's got a chip on his shoulder, and I expect him to play really well in this one. But the calls for Latrell to be moved or dropped, the other, like, some of them are saying move Jack Whiten into fullback and Latrell into centre. What does that achieve? Jack Whiten has played fullback. He's a good fullback. He's just a good football player though, Jack Whiten. He's not going to bring anything more at fullback that Latrell doesn't. Latrell actually has a lot more to his game than Jack Whiten. Jack Whiten played well at centre in his first game for the Rabbitohs. I don't understand it. I'm hoping, obviously I want a close competition across the entire year this year, and I want close contests. I think this one will be a close contest. I don't see any team getting away with a big win here, but I'd like the Rabbitohs to win this one just to maybe get a few people off their backs. Not so much me. I'm still going to be their biggest critic, but I think if they can win this one, then it's more so that people are going to stop calling for Latrell's head, stop calling for Cody's head. And that's good because I think if they can just settle into some structures, they can win. So, as I said, if we go back to that equal contest in the middle, where do the points come from? They come from Latrell and Cody. I think Cody's going to have a chip on his shoulder. I think he's going to have to run this side. Dean Hawkins, he's a good player, but he's very early into his NRL career. I think Cody's going to do all of the attacking structures, and if he can perform like we know he can, he will get the Rabbitohs away to a win in this one. While for the Bulldogs, if they're to win, it's a very similar thing. They have really, it's not so much individual based for the Bulldogs, but their structures are really, really strong so far to start this season. So if they can win field position, they will settle into those attacking structures really nicely, and they'll be really hard to defend. So really hard one to tip. I'll take the Rabbitohs, but I'm worried about it. I think Bulldogs can definitely get away with the win. In terms of a matchup for this one, it's going to be a hard one to tip. I can go to the 5/8s again, Matt Burton and Cody Walker. I think I've identified Matt Burton as my matchup every Bulldogs preview, so don't really want to do that. I'd like to see Alex Johnston score on the wing here. He'll be marking up against Blake Wilson. I don't mind that little matchup. Similar sort of players. They're quick, they're nippy, good try scorers. Blake Wilson's been getting through a lot of work so far this season, which is something that Johnston has been lacking. I think Johnston hasn't really had that opportunity, even if he would do it regardless. But I like that as a little matchup. I think both players could cross for tries in this one. So if you want to throw some cash on that as well, not a bad shout. I don't mind Jack Whiten and Stephen Crichton as well as a matchup. I think that's my big matchup from this one. The captain of the Bulldogs and Stephen Crichton, the new recruit, versus the other star recruit, the Dally M winner of 2020, going up against the Bulldogs captain. I love that. Jack Whiten and Stephen Crichton, the centre duel there. That is my matchup for this one. We will move into my bets for this game. So this one, not so much expansive as the Roosters and Panthers one. This one is a lot smaller odds, only $7 odds, but I will get into it. I've got the Canterbury Bulldogs with a plus 6.5 line. That's an alternative line. The normal line for this game was 5.5. So if the Rabbitohs won by 6, that would actually lose. I didn't want to take that risk, so I've gone the 6.5. So the Bulldogs can lose by 6, and it will pay that out. The second leg is Stephen Crichton as an anytime try scorer. We just mentioned him in my preview. You know how excited I am for him. And I've got the match going over 42.5 total match points. We know the Rabbitohs are a very attacking side, but we saw the Bulldogs last week granted against a very poor Titans outfit, but they put some points on there. So I can see this one definitely going over that 42.5 total match points. Once again, I'll read those out really quickly. We have Canterbury Bulldogs with a plus 6.5 line, Stephen Crichton as an anytime try scorer, and over 42.5 total match points for a multi of $7. So if you're putting $1 on that and that wins, you win $7 back. Very much not the most expensive one, but sometimes you have to do them. I'm not going to go for value if I don't see it happening. I'm going to trust what I think is going to happen. So that one wraps us up for that preview. Really excited for this game. I do think it will be a close contest. And I'm excited to see how these two teams progress, into this season. But we'll move on to the late game on the Friday. This one's the one that we're all excited for. We have the Brisbane Broncos taking on the North Queensland Cowboys at Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane. So it is of course, a Broncos home game, 8 p.m, Beautiful stuff. We've got the Queensland derby here. Broncos are currently sitting 14th on the ladder, obviously getting a few losses here and there. They've had a hard start to the competition, though. Cowboys, however, they're in first. They are undefeated, the only team in the NRL that is undefeated through 3 rounds into this season. When it comes to ins and outs, of course, the Broncos have a few. We will start with Adam Reynolds returning at halfback. He's returned from injury, so Jock Madden makes way. The other big one here, Reece Walsh. We all saw the facial fracture. He's out for a few weeks. Tristan Saylor takes his place at fullback. So Selwyn Cobbo, who ended up moving there in the game last week, he is back into the centres. But Tristan Saylor is at fullback. In terms of their forward pack, still no Payne Haas, so Fletcher Baker is still named to start. Brendan Piakora did his ankle as well, so he is out for a few weeks. Jaden Hunt comes in at second row to replace him. On their bench, we also see the return of a familiar face. Corey Oates has been named in jersey 17, so that's really good to see. Martin Tapau has also been dropped from this side, which is quite shocking. I thought Tapau's been pretty good this season, but I guess they just want a bit of depth here and there, when you've got Willison and Kobe Hetherington, very much middle forwards. If you had Tapau on there, it's like for like. You got 3 middle forwards. Corey Oates can provide a bit more depth. He can play in the backs, and you can also play him at second row at a stretch. So don't mind seeing him back in there. For the Cowboys, they're pretty much the same. The only change is that Zach Labour returns. He was a late scratching last week. He returns at centre, and Tom Chester makes way. He's now 18th man in this one. So really excited to see this one. Obviously, the Queensland derby. We know these teams have a fierce rivalry ever since they essentially came back into the competition. This was the 2015 grand final. I think it was about 3 games after that 2015 grand final as well that they all went to Golden Point. Some of my favourite contests of all time have come from these two teams. So once again, I'm really excited, especially because they're now very, very good sides. They're both, premiership heavyweights. So really excited to see how this one goes. In terms of tips, I've tipped the Cowboys. I just think the losses of Reece Walsh, Piakora, and of course Payne Haas will prove to be too much for the Broncos. And of course, this Cowboys side, I've been so impressed with how they've played this season. Once again, I say it every time, they can score from anywhere on the field. They have threats anywhere across their entire starting 13, even their entire 17. So points can come from anywhere. They play expansive footy. They play hard footy. Really excited. I really enjoy watching this team just play rugby league, especially so far in 2024. So I have tipped the North Queensland Cowboys in this one. Definitely not confident. We know what the Broncos are. They're the grand finalists of last year for a reason, and they haven't played bad despite being where they are on the ladder. They've had a hard competition. They've had a few things go against them, but they've played really well to start this season as well. So I can see the Broncos coming away with a win. I'm just going to tip the Cowboys for myself. In terms of how I see it playing out, it's going to be a very interesting one, I think. The Cowboys don't necessarily play to a bash you down the middle. Taumalolo plays for 20 minutes and then they get him off the field and never see him again. They just play expansive. They spread to their edges and they play through that. So it's going to be not so much a forward pack duel in this one. I think the Broncos are a lot more direct in theirs, but they're also missing a few troops. Are they going to be doing that again this game? We'll have to see. So I'm not sure how it plays out in that sense in terms of the forward packs. I just think both sides are going to be happy to spread this ball and let their outside backs just run amok. And we do have some very explosive and exciting outside backs. The duels in the centres, Tony Staggs and Selwyn Cobbo up against Valentine Holmes and Zach Labour. That's exciting. The experienced winger of Kyle Felt, and you could even say Murray Taulagi is quite experienced now, versus the rookie of Dean Mariner and Jesse Arthurs, who's still pretty early on into the games in his NRL career. It's just really exciting stuff. Even if you look at the halfback duel, two experienced premiership winning halfbacks, Adam Reynolds, Chad Townsend, and then the two young dynamos in 5'8", Ezra Mam, Tom Dearden. I love this game. I'm really, really excited. I'm not sure how it plays out. Both teams can win this, and I think both teams can win it from any facet of the game. I think it will just be spread coast to coast, let the outside backs go through, and just make it duels, make it one-on-one duels, and see who gets the cherries here, which I'm really excited to see. In terms of my matchups, there's a lot. Of course, I did just mention those centre duels. I really like those. Of course, Staggs and Cobbo, Valentine Holmes, and Zach Labour. Love that. Love the halves duels. I think that is probably where I'm going to look at it. Obviously, matchups, I normally go against one player from each team. I'm going to add the entire halves into this one because they're very like for like. So Chad Townsend and Tom Dearden up against Adam Reynolds and Ezra Mam. That is my matchup in this one, or those are my matchups in this one. Really excited to see how these halves lead their teams around and how they're going to get their team the win. In terms of the bets for this one, it's a little bit more expensive than the last one, but not the most valuable. I've just gone North Queensland Cowboys head-to-head. I have Tony Staggs as an anytime try scorer. I really like how he's been playing so far this season. I can see him crossing in this one. And I've got the match going over 43.5 total match points. Once again, we know these sides, they're expansive. They can score points wherever and whenever they want. And I see that happening. So over 43.5 total match points, I think that is a lock. Even if it's a close game, it could be a bloody 30-point or close game from these two sides. They score from anywhere. So really happy with those legs. I'll read through them once again. North Queensland Cowboys head-to-head. Tony Staggs, anytime try scorer, over 43.5 total match points for a multi of 9.5 value. So once again, if you're putting $1 on that and the bet gets up, you get $9.50 back to the dollar. Once again, I will say it, these are all through Sportsbet. If you are not betting through Sportsbet, some of these markets may not be available, and even if they are, the odds may be completely different. So if you're wanting to follow along with me, you do it through the Sportsbet app. Not affiliated, they're just who I choose to bet through. And it's not my responsibility. If you jump on these and they lose, you cannot have a go at me. You're choosing to do this of your own accord. But if you want to jump on them and ride along with me, head over to my Instagram at Chip and Chase Podcast. Swing me a message there. We can chat. We can ride these ones together, and hopefully we can win some money. But that one wraps us up for the Thursday, Friday previews, guys. So thank you guys for tuning into this one. We'll be back again tomorrow. Maybe not tomorrow, but we'll be back again Saturday for those previews and the Sunday game ones in the future as well. So thank you guys for tuning into this one, and I'll see you guys next time.